Before we start off with our regularly scheduled programming, I would just like to take a moment to say thank you so much for 100 plus subscribers. That is a absolutely huge deal to me, and that combined with all the super nice comments you guys have been leaving has left me over the moon. So thank you so much for that. And now back to your normal chapter. This is Set Him Free, Chapter 7. Roman groggily opened his eyes. A dull ache surfaced from within the back of his head, and he winced at the sudden pain. He blinked, trying to sort through the fog that now occupied his mind. Everything felt distant, his eyes refusing to focus without a great bout of effort. Roman reached a hand towards his head, attempting to check for a concussion, though freezing as he realized he had been bound at the wrists. No. The prince shot up, cringing at the sting that surfaced from his protesting body. He strained, his surroundings finally becoming clear to him. This was not the alleyway, nor the comfort of his own room. The space was cramped and immersed in shadows, holding nothing but a few shelves and the chair Roman currently appeared to be tied to. A deep pit formed in his stomach. He had broken his promise to stay cautious. 1 second of inattentive thinking, and he wound up knocked unconscious, only to be brought to wherever he happened to be trapped. If he ever escaped, his mother was going to have a few choice things to say to him. When he escaped, Roman corrected his thoughts. Losing hope wasn't going to get him anywhere. He glanced around the room, beginning to survey every inch of his new surroundings, despite the pang that occupied his mind every time he formed a thought. A window lay within the corner of the room, though the prince's hopes sank once he took note of the locked shutters. Roman frowned. The wooden chair he had been restrained to was providing no relief to his aching body. He begged his mind for answers, some way to escape his current predicament, though it cruelly responded with a stab of defiance that left his head spinning. He never was one for formulating expert plans. That was Logan's expertise, and the advisor didn't appear to be anywhere near his current location. The cards had truly fallen out of his favor this time. A brass lock turned with a sudden tick, causing the prince to startle. The oak door swung open, black boots tapping across the wooden floors and sending a chill through Roman's spine. He glared at the man approaching him, the latter returning a sly grin reflected by olive green eyes. A contrasting blemish covered one side of his face, framed with his golden brown hair and adding to the sharp mystery that seemed to follow the man. He circled the prince, humming a soft tune to himself as if completely unbothered. The absolute nonchalance of it all left Roman unsettled. After what seemed like an eternity of silence, the stranger circled back to face Roman. As if it were to be a secret indication, 2 others emerged from the doorway, one of which Roman recognized. "You," he growled, staring daggers at the thief. Virgil only offered a small glimpse in his direction, slinking away to lean against the wall in the far corner. That was odd. No witty remark, no infuriating smirk. Everything about this screamed trouble. The man's smile only grew within the uneasy silence, piercing Roman with each passing second. Roman returned the sharp glare, caught off guard as the stranger began to laugh. "Oh, you sure are a fiery one, aren't you?" The man spoke, managing to compose himself. "You take greatly after your father." Roman bit the inside of his cheek at the comment. It probably wasn't the best idea to infuriate his captors with a livid remark just yet. The stranger seemed to savor his silence, a cunning look flashing within his eyes. "Is something of the matter, Roman? I would have thought you would be simply ecstatic to finally awaken, especially since you've been unconscious for almost a full day." I knew I should have hit him harder, the one clad in green chimed from the back. I could have added at least 2 more for sure. Now, Remus, let's not forget that the prince here is still a valued guest. Isn't that right, Roman? Roman only glowered in response, amusement shining within the stranger's eyes. Right, where are my manners, Your Highness? What do you want from me? Roman sneered, narrowing his eyes. He speaks, the man proclaimed, clasping his hands together. Though I do believe you are getting ahead of yourself, Prince. Allow me to introduce myself before we move on to the pleasantries. I may be addressed as Janus. I'm sure you've already met Virgil. We're acquainted. The prince's words dripped with malice, Virgil scowling slightly in return. And the other standing to my right would be Remus Basuda. Such a displeasure to meet you. He practically bounced over to Roman, formally sticking out his hand and falling into a fit of giggles. Oh, right. You can't shake my hand since you're a little tied up at the moment. We sure roped you into this one, didn't we? Could you call back your trash rat? I think I'm being soiled simply by his presence, Roman remarked. The corners of his mouth turned up slightly as Remus huffed in annoyance, though his small success quickly vanished once the one called Janus spoke again. I do believe that is quite enough from the both of you. There are much more important matters at hand, and one that you have a grand part to play in. Janus's cold eyes settled on Roman. I assume you've been acquainted with many of the kingdom's inner workings? I have no need to answer your questions. I demand you set me free. Man, you really don't get this kidnapping thing, do you? Remus giggled from the back, receiving a glare from the prince. What my lively friend means to communicate is that you will not be released unless you meet our demands. Your kingdom holds secrets to something capable of destroying entire empires. Something more powerful than one could imagine. You will give me access to the information detailing this. Roman's brow furrowed. I don't understand. Don't play coy with me, Roman. It was your own father who discovered this and hid it from the world. I suggest you cooperate and tell me what the kingdom is hiding, as my patience quickly runs thin. Have you gone mad? There is no such confidentiality within our walls. Release me at once. You will bestow the information I require if you ever wish to see the open sky again. There is no such thing as to what you describe. Even if it did exist, the public would be informed immediately. The corners of Janus's mouth turned in distaste. You only wish to uncover every secret but your own. Your crooked monarchy wants nothing other than complete control, and it is proved by your reluctance. Each second you deny the royals' twisted intentions only greater reveals your flaws. Eldon is not hiding anything. We would never conceal such secrets. Liar. Janus scowled, coming inches from Roman's face. Now is not the time to remain the hero, Roman. Your fate currently depends on your willingness to cooperate. No one within this entire city knows your whereabouts aside from us, so you can forget about getting rescued. And why should I believe any words that come from your mouth? Roman pulled against the restraints. You're nothing but a wicked deceiver. The older smiled, any trace of fury fading from his face. Call me all the names you wish, Your Highness. Nothing will change the dreadful condition of your current situation. He stood up, placing a hand underneath Roman's chin, who recoiled at the touch. You clearly aren't open to discussion at the moment, so I will be leaving you to your thoughts. Maybe with time you'll reconsider." "You won't get away with this!" Roman shouted as the three approached the door. "The kingdom will find you. You all will be vanquished, I swear upon it." "Oh, darling, it is pitiful to lie to yourself," Janice whispered, bitter green eyes shining cunningly as the door closed shut. The lock turned with a jeering tick, trapping Roman within the silence. Virgil stepped into the corridor, his features remaining slack. Remus skipped over to him, flashing a twisted grin, but pausing as he received no response. You okay there, Verge?" The thief slowly met Remus's eyes if he had only just noticed his presence. "Oh, yeah, I'm fine. Sorry, I was just thinking." "Okay, you have fun with that. I'm going to go color code my beetle collection." Remus pranced farther down the hallway, bounding into his room and eagerly slamming the door as loud as he could. Janice then emerged from the doorway. The smirk that had so easily occupied his lips before now slipped away, sending frustration through the air. He offered a small glance to Virgil before slinking off towards his workroom. Virgil silently followed. Janice paid the younger no attention, bringing his gaze to the bookshelf that lay beside his workbench. He plucked various novels from the surface, almost seeming frantic. In the end, all that remained untouched from the pile of wreckage was a small envelope, the paper tinted with soil and tea stains. Janice ignored the mess of novels that now occupied the floor and forcefully slammed the envelope upon the workbench. Virgil remained in the corner, flinching slightly as his friend violently pulled several papers from the envelope. Janice began shifting through the parchment, throwing several to the side that didn't meet his standards. One managed to float to Virgil's feet, and he hesitantly plucked it from the floor. Graphite sketches etched its surface, combined with a looped cursive writing, one very similar to Janice's own. Eyes narrowed, he attempted to interpret the scratched letters. 3 words caught his eye, standing out within the sea of notations. Trust no one. Before he had any time to process the rest of the page, however, a pounding of footsteps echoed behind him, and Virgil startled with a squeak. Janice glared down at him, words dripping with impatience. "What do you want, Virgil?" "You better have a good explanation for all of this." He met the gaze of his friend, eyes narrowed. "I have no idea what you're referring to. Perhaps you could be more specific?" "You know exactly what I'm talking about, Janice. Kidnapping the person who not only despises me, but is also the literal Prince of Eldon? Have you lost your mind?" Janice raised a brow at this, the corners of his mouth turning up. "On the contrary, my dear friend, I believe I am quite sane, if not extremely enlightened. I have created an opportunity to expose the doings of the rulers of the world. And yet you still stand before me worried." "I'm not worried," Virgil countered. Doubtful green eyes stared right through him. "All right, fine. I'm just a little skeptical, is all. This is treason. If Roman were to escape back to the kingdom and somehow find us again, we could be imprisoned, or worse." "You think I do not know this? Look at the big picture, Virgil. The world needs to stop living in a lie, and I am willing to do what it takes to make that happen." "What even are these secrets that you claim to be so treacherous?" Janice opened his mouth, then hesitated. His gaze slipped over ever so slightly to the envelope left in his hands, catching Virgil's attention. He didn't say anything about the action. Something that must not be hidden any longer, especially not by the royals, Janice finally replied. Virgil frowned at how the inventor had danced around his question, but did not press further. Instead, he softly nodded and turned to leave. He was reaching his limits with the unexpected today. Janice, however, placed a hand on his shoulder just before he reached the doorway, silently motioning to the parchment still held within his hands. Virgil returned the page with an apologetic glance, and again padded towards the exit. Paper in hand, Janice returned to his workbench and awaited the sound of footprints to indicate that Virgil had finally left. He exhaled, allowing all his pent-up energy to disappear. The words scribbled on the page he held stared at him, beckoning him to indulge in the memories. He did not give them the satisfaction. Instead, he gathered the collection of sketches and writings and shoved them into the envelope. That was something he could uncover another time. A time in which he wasn't already irritated about everyone's ignorance. Given Roman's royal status, Janice assumed he would have possessed a little more dignity given his situation. Though, he had quickly learned through his questioning that the prince was anything but dignified. At least, not within his current circumstances. Janice could see now why Virgil was irked by the young monarch so easily. It made sense. No matter how well he fought, or how valiant he was said to be, Roman Averil was still a naive teenager. Though maybe, Janice thought, that could be used as an advantage. This has been Chapter 7 of Set Him Free. Thank you so very much for listening, and I will see you next time for Chapter 8.